Inside America's bloodiest prison. Life on death row. The monster behind the walls. If you think freedom is scary, wait till you hear what happens behind bars. Hit subscribe, like, and turn on notifications, because this is not the prison story you think you know. The morning fog rolled over the razor wire fences of Louisiana State Penitentiary, better known as Angola, a place so vast and isolated it was called the farm. Once a slave plantation, now a prison where time stood still. Inside its walls lived some of America's most dangerous men, and a few who swore they didn't belong there. At 6:42 a.m., the sound of an alarm ripped through cell block C. Guards sprinted down the concrete corridor, radios crackling. Inmate James "Red" Calloway, sentenced to death for a triple homicide in Baton Rouge, was found lying face down on the floor of his cell, motionless. Blood seeped from his neck into the cracks of the concrete. His cellmate, Marcus Lee, sat trembling in the corner, whispering, "He wasn't supposed to die like that, he wasn't supposed to die yet." Captain Renee Hollis, a 20-year veteran of Angola, arrived moments later. Her voice was steady but her eyes showed unease. Red had been a lifer, a violent man but disciplined. He'd survived riots, stabbings, and solitary confinement. Yet, no weapon was found and the door had been locked from the inside. By noon, the prison was in full lockdown. Hundreds of men were sealed in their cells. The warden ordered a full sweep, metal detectors, canine units, body checks. But no blade, no blood-stained shiv, no weapon turned up anywhere. The coroner's report only deepened the mystery. The wound was precise, surgical, a single cut, perfectly clean. Detective Caleb Stroud, a quiet investigator from Baton Rouge PD, was brought in to assist. He'd seen Angola before, but something about this case unsettled him. "You're telling me," he asked the captain, "that a man was killed in a locked cell with no weapon and no noise?" Hollis nodded slowly. "That's what the cameras show. The lights flicker for 3 seconds and then he's gone." Outside Angola's gates, rumors began to spread. Whispers among former guards, ex-inmates, even reporters. Some said Red had found something before his death, a secret about Angola's past that certain people wanted buried. Others believed it was an inside job, payback from the guards for something that happened years ago. But in the prison yard, stories were darker. Inmates spoke of a man called the Preacher. No one knew his real name, but they said he'd been on death row for 15 years. Always quiet, always watching. Some claimed he could predict who'd die next. Others swore he'd made a deal with the guards, that anyone who crossed him vanished within days. Detective Stroud visited the Preacher's cell that evening. The man was sitting on his bunk, Bible open, hands folded. "I heard you're a man who knows things," Stroud said. The Preacher smiled, slow and calm. "We all know things in here, detective. But most of us are smart enough to keep quiet about them." Stroud's instincts screamed at him. He felt like he was standing inside a story that had already been written. He just didn't know how it ended. That night, as guards changed shifts, a young officer named Cooper was reviewing surveillance footage. The moment the lights flickered in Red's cell, a faint shadow appeared on the wall, not of Red or Marcus but someone standing outside the bars. A tall silhouette in a guard's uniform. When Cooper went to call it in, the monitor went black. His radio fizzed out. In the next 5 minutes, the entire surveillance system shut down. By morning, there was another alarm. Another inmate was found dead, in the exact same way. But this time, the cameras showed something no one at Angola could explain. Because for 3 full seconds, the man standing outside the cell, the shadow in the uniform, had no face. And that was when Detective Stroud realized, this wasn't just another murder on death row. This was a message. Inside America's bloodiest prison. Life on death row. The death row code. The storm rolled over Angola Prison, thunder shaking the steel gates like the world itself was warning them to stop digging. But Detective Caleb Stroud didn't stop. The second body, Anthony "Tone" Ramirez, a convicted hitman, had been found with the same clean neck wound as Red Calloway. No weapon. No struggle. No answers. The warden's office smelled of coffee and panic. "We got cameras on every inch of this place," the warden barked. "If a man sneezes wrong, we see it. So tell me, Stroud, how do 2 inmates die in locked cells without anyone laying a finger on them?" Stroud didn't respond. He was staring at the security logs. Both deaths happened during brief power surges, exactly 3 seconds long. Always around 2:14 a.m. The same time. The same blackout. The same pattern. He turned to Captain Hollis. "Who has access to the main generator logs?" "Just maintenance," she said. "And the control room officers." "Get me the list," Stroud replied. "Now." Outside, the rain beat down on the yard. Dozens of inmates stood under shelter, whispering about the ghost guard. To them, Angola wasn't haunted by spirits, it was haunted by secrets. One inmate muttered, "Death row got rules, and someone's breaking them." When Stroud returned to cell block C, the preacher was already waiting for him. "You feel it yet?" the old man asked softly. "Feel what?" Stroud said. "The place. It breathes. Angola remembers everything that's happened here. It don't forget, and it don't forgive." There was a silence that felt heavy enough to crush bone. The preacher leaned forward. "Those men who died red in tone, they weren't friends. But they worked together once. For the guards. They were part of the code." Stroud frowned. "What code?" The preacher smiled faintly. "The death row code. A system of trades and promises. You do the guards' dirty work, you get favors, extra food, early visits, less time in the hole. But if you break the code," he paused, "you disappear." Stroud's pulse quickened. "So you're saying the guards are behind this?" "I'm saying," the preacher whispered, "that the truth's been buried under this place since the day they built it." Later that night, Stroud reviewed a decade's worth of internal reports. 5 unexplained inmate deaths in 7 years, all listed as self-inflicted. All in cell block C. All during minor power outages. Each inmate had once worked as a trustee, inmates allowed to help staff. The pieces began to connect, but too neatly, too fast. Someone wanted him to find this trail. Someone was watching him. At 2 a.m. Stroud stood outside the block, waiting. Rain hammered the metal roof. Then right on time, the lights flickered. 3 seconds of total darkness. He drew his flashlight and moved in, every step echoing off the concrete. When the light snapped back on, one of the doors, cell 113, was open. Inside lay Officer Cooper, the same young guard who had found the shadow footage. His throat was cut clean just like the others. And this time, a note was pinned to his shirt. Read, "Stop digging. This is not your prison." The handwriting was old-fashioned, perfect cursive, like something written with patience and care. On the back of the note, faint fingerprints pressed into the paper. Stroud lifted it under the flashlight beam. They matched the preacher. When they raided his cell, the preacher was gone. His bunk was neatly made, Bible still open. But on the page, a single verse was underlined in red ink. "And the truth shall set you free." The guards tore through every block, every hallway, every shadow. But the preacher had vanished from a prison where no one escapes. Hours later, Stroud sat in his car outside Angola, staring at the gatehouse lights through the rain. He replayed the footage of cell 113 over and over. 3 seconds of blackout. Then a flicker. A figure moving down the hall, slow and deliberate. It was unmistakably the preacher. But here's what made Stroud's blood run cold: the timestamp. The footage was recorded 2 hours after the preacher had already vanished. He wasn't running away. He was walking back in. Inside America's bloodiest prison. Life on death row. The last confession. By dawn, Angola was silent. A kind of silence that felt intentional. The rain had stopped, but the air hung thick with dread. Every guard looked over their shoulder. Every inmate whispered the same word, "Preacher." Detective Caleb Stroud hadn't slept. His clothes were damp, his eyes red from staring at screens all night. The footage replayed in his mind. The preacher walking calmly down the corridor 2 hours after he'd vanished, his face hidden in the flicker of the lights. It didn't make sense. The prison's logs showed no door opened, no alarm tripped, no movement outside his cell. Stroud met Captain Hollis in the control room. "You're sure no one tampered with these files?" he asked. "Positive," she said, rubbing her temples. "But this isn't the first time footage has rewritten itself." Stroud's head snapped toward her. "What do you mean?" "There've been incidents," she confessed. "For years. Old tapes showing things that shouldn't be there. Guards who were dead appearing on shift footage. It's like the system remembers what it wants to." He leaned against the console, feeling the weight of it all. Angola wasn't just a prison, it was a graveyard of stories buried under layers of silence. At 8:30 a.m. Stroud got word. A guard had found something inside Red Calloway's old cell. Beneath the mattress, taped under the frame, was a cassette tape marked Testament. The tape crackled when played, the voice soft but unmistakable. "The preacher. If you're hearing this, I'm already gone. But not free. Not yet. Angola don't let you leave, not really. We were the code. We did their work. We cleaned the blood they spilled and called it justice. They buried their sins in the swamp, and they called us monsters for finding them." The tape went silent for a beat. Then the voice came back, this time trembling. They said if we stayed quiet, they'd let us live our days out clean. But they lied. Red found proof. That's why they took him. The truth's in the files, sublevel storage. Behind the morgue. The recording ended with a faint sound, the hum of fluorescent lights and something that could have been a prayer. Stroud and Hollis descended to the sublevel that afternoon, an area sealed off years ago. The hall smelled like rust and forgotten time. The morgue was cold, metal drawers lining the walls like silent coffins. Behind one loose panel, they found a narrow space leading to a locked room. The tag on the door read, Archive B17. Hollis picked the latch with her knife. Inside were boxes upon boxes of inmate records, each marked unconfirmed death. Stroud lifted one. Inside were photos, mugshots of inmates marked deceased, but cross-referenced, the same men were still listed as alive in Angola's roster. It hit him then, the code wasn't about survival. It was about erasure. Inmates who knew too much didn't die, they were deleted. Their deaths staged. Their files rewritten. Their bodies buried under false names. Stroud's flashlight flickered and a low hum filled the room. The lights above began to pulse. 3 seconds off, 3 seconds on. He turned to Hollis, but she wasn't looking at him. She was staring past him, face pale. In the doorway stood the preacher. He looked the same, calm, collected, his Bible in hand. "You shouldn't have come here, detective," he said softly. "You killed them," Stroud said. "You killed Red, Ramirez, Cooper." The preacher shook his head slowly. "I didn't kill anyone, son. I finished what they started." He stepped closer, the dim light reflecting off his eyes. "They made me part of the code. They made me clean the rot. But the truth has to come out. Angola's the devil's playground and I was his warden." Hollis reached for her gun, but the preacher raised his hand. "You think the ones who died are gone? Look at your own rosters. Every name you see there, they're still here." Then he dropped his Bible to the floor. It opened on the same verse, underlined in red, "And the truth shall set you free." Before Stroud could move, the lights went out. 3 seconds of blackness. When they came back on, the preacher was gone. Again. But this time he'd left something behind. On the inside cover of the Bible was a folded photograph, a black and white image of Angola's yard from decades ago. Standing at the center of a group of guards was a younger man. Same eyes. Same face. The preacher. The date at the bottom read, August 12, 1973. He'd been a guard, not an inmate. Stroud's voice broke. "He was here, before any of them." Hollis whispered, "He never left." That night, as Stroud drove away from Angola, he glanced in the rearview mirror. Through the rain, the prison's watchtower light flickered once, twice, then 3 times. 3 seconds. And on the radio, the tape began to play again, without him touching it. "The truth shall set you free. But first it will bury you."